All right. Not feeling my best today. I'm thinking I might actually have some kind of infection from that tick bite because it was right back here. I've had an ache across this shoulder and up here and now on the left side of my jaw, and now it's really making both sides of my jaw ache. So I'm going to talk with the doctor in the next 24 hours, I think. But, oh yeah. It's not doing great things for talking either. All right, so putzing around with the game building. Where am I? Not doing as much today as I could, but exploring the possibilities of trying to achieve different things with the BuildBox software. Trying to think ahead to some of the other game styles that I wanted to try to build with it. The Whack an Asteroid game, I think it's going to be a different level of difficult because it doesn't have a readily recognizable mechanism for an existing game. So, I mean, I'm sort of playing around with using the basketball version of it. Instead of doing one hoop at the top and using gravity for the ball to land in it, I'm going to try to break apart how that program works and maybe put it in a different type of setting, but sort of have balls launched from sights coming towards the player, then being hit back and not depending on gravity, because it's supposed to take place in space. I'm getting video glitching, so we have a big storm here. So that we had one on Monday too, I think, or before I started video on Monday. So that may be interfering with my post. I'm not up for trying to do some live screen captures tonight, and I don't think the internet connection is up for it tonight. Stressful day, not a lot of time to tinker on what I need to tinker on, so again, it's getting back burner to try to work that system out again. But yeah, so working on the game design for the Whack an Asteroid, that's using that basketball version, the template in BuildBox. Take a thing, have it launched from a different location than it usually is, and then being able to impact with it and bounce it back to where it came from without gravity causing a ballistic arc and without a designated downward direction is sort of what I want to do. What I want to have is have the player character that you're playing, like the asteroid that comes at you. If you do nothing and you just stand still and it impacts with your, it knocks you off screen and you take injury. But do something if you hit the space bar at the right time, you punch the asteroid and send it back to where it came from, or back along another angle depending on the direction you hit it from. And it's sort of like there used to be a couple games you could play when I was younger on the computer. You would be in the center of the screen and an asteroid would come at you and you would turn towards it and fire, and when your bullet hit it, you have to break into 3 smaller asteroids and go in the opposite direction again. And I want to sort of do the same thing, but I break into smaller pieces. Well, maybe, actually. I'm not sure about that. I may think about that again. I'm going to do like in Captain Mr. Space Ninja version of it. If he's going to have an asteroid launched at him and he punches it, it's going to be like a karate chop. And so he can hit that. If it breaks in half and goes in 2 or 3 directions, that's one possibility of making that happen that way. But the goal is to then launch the rock back at the enemies launching it at you, so that the pieces impact at certain locations, like whack-a-mole. So you're not hitting with a physical object hopping from one to the other. They come up, they spit things at you, you hit the things they spit, and they go back and hit them as they pop up. So it's a much more complicated version of the game. It's sort of like, it's almost like playing baseball, where a pitcher jumps up and throws it at you, ducks back down, and then you hit the ball and aim it towards, there might be 6 to 8 different pitcher mounds, and the pitcher pops up and down from behind the pitcher mound. And so when one pops up and throws a ball at you, you hit it, you're aiming for where it looks like, so there might be an indicator of a pitcher's going to pop up here. And when Captain Mr. Space Ninja, it's going to be the pirate ship is broadside to you, and the cannon ports are going to open, and they're launched at you, and then you hit them back at them. For the test run game, I actually think maybe doing like pitch mound, call it a stupid, like, weird sports game where there are 6 to 8 pitchers mounds, and the pitcher mounds have pitchers that open, sort of like a tank hatch, pop up, and somebody pops out and throws a grenade at you or something like that, and you're there with a baseball bat, and you just ping them back and see if you can aim for, because like in this particular case, in the Captain Mr. Space Ninja version of it, the broadside of the ship, you're going to have the port open for the cannons to come out of, and as soon as you see a sign of a port opening and you have an asteroid coming at you, you'd hit it right back towards an opening port. So if it comes from the top side down towards you, but as it gets closer to you, you can see a port opening on the lower side, you want to get above it so you can hit it at a downward angle. Now, I feel like that's hard enough to figure out how to get it to do that. Those collision mechanics, you don't hit and it impacts you. If you don't do a strike with the space bar or something like that, and it instead hits you, you take damage, is one of the things I have to figure out. How to get the angle changed of impacts, I think I could probably get that part worked out. The vulnerability of the enemy pieces, and the launching of the asteroids, I think I have to figure out. I don't know if I can make them bullets or if I have to make them collision objects, physics objects, or what. And I don't know if I'm going to make them split if you hit them. I don't know that it's productive to do that. But it may be possible that if you hit it and it splits, that you get a slighter spread of the direction it's going to go from when you hit it, and smaller pieces move faster. I don't know. Effectively turning the enemy bullet into your bullets. And maybe that could be something I could do as a power-up, where one asteroid comes at you, you hit it, and it goes back as one asteroid, but you find a power-up and it splits the asteroid into smaller pieces, and so gets you a wider spread. Now, if I do 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 holes, as you start the game, it'll be one at a time, maybe at higher level as things accelerate. There may be 2 to 3 ports that open at the same time. And do they all launch asteroids, or do some of them launch space junk? So like tin cans or little aliens that they shoot out that if they collide with you, like you can't hit them, because if you do, they grab onto you and make you keep you stuck in that spot until you can shake it off. Like, so there are ways to, increase the complexity of the game, which makes it harder to make, but at the same time increases the enjoyability and playability of the game. So I got to figure some of that out. And then I'm still not sure how I'm going to handle the edible ghost version of the game at the end. That one's a little bit more of a like, I'm using that as a rough idea of how I'm going to do that. What I'm really trying to do is, it's sort of like, imagine like, story-wise, the goal is that, say you're in a shuttle bay and they open the shuttle bay and they drop your spaceship, your shuttle, out of it, and you have to try to get back to the shuttle to get into it. Not what's happening in the game, but for a rough example of that, it's going to be free drifting and spinning and bouncing off of things, and you're going to be flying with a jetpack or swimming through space, or however we want to do this. You have to try to catch it. And so it's not an object that you'll collide with and it hurts you, and you're not hurt. But it also shouldn't be just drifting in a straight line and you have to run to catch up to it. So tap your button faster and faster and faster to catch up to it. I don't think that's what I want to try to do to it. But I also am acutely aware of the fact that, like, they're not in an asteroid field. That's not really the goal of that. So you can't have, like, try to catch it and move around all these objects unless it's space junk. I'm not sure how else to make the catching of that thing more difficult. Oh, my neck is killing me. All right. So I'm trying to figure that part out. I feel like maybe doing something like I was considering something like a ray gun, where you hit an object and it changes its direction. I don't know. That doesn't make as much sense as I want it to. But that one's sort of almost a little bit more of a, that's sort of a platformer in a way, but it's a platformer where you're not on the ground and jumping. It's almost a little bit more like I wonder if I did something more along the lines of a grappling hook, and you're swimming through space, and the object you're trying to catch, you have to try to keep up with and launch your grapple at. But that's really easy to get too easy or too hard. And it doesn't really offer enough gameplay option. You either keep up with it and shoot it right, or you don't. So you have to have some kind of obstacles to move around. Like any level where you do swimming level in a game, There are always little monsters you have to watch out for. There are always like environmental things you have to swim around, and the floating or sinking aspect of your swimming is an important aspect of the movement. If you're in space, it's just, you could put some asteroids or simple comets or something like that in there. It's not really accurate to the way the story's happening sort of between the moon and Earth. So I don't know that that makes a lot of sense. But I mean, maybe satellites? I don't know. Satellites with lasers on them firing at you? That doesn't seem right either. Like, why would they be firing at you? They're not enemy things. Maybe I'm overthinking it, but yeah. So I'm thinking possibly the object you're trying to catch I don't know, like the movement through space, you can't really swim through space. So I wonder if there's some sort of space debris, so space garbage or other stuff drifting around. And instead of using your grapple to catch the thing you're trying to get, what you need to do is use your grapple to hook a piece of garbage. And the garbage or the object that you hook with your grapple, you both move towards each other. And then that's how you move around the swimming environment. And have the ship move around erratically, or the object that you're trying to catch, the ship you're trying to get on board, or whatever object we have drifting around that you're trying to catch. You use your grapple to get closer to by catching a nearby piece of garbage or a satellite, and pull yourself to the satellite, and then sort of angle yourself towards try to get closer and closer, so that the ship you're trying to get to drifts between two pieces, and you can use the grapple from one piece to another piece to pop up at the right time to intercept the object. That might be the thing that makes the most sense. That would be a challenge. That's essentially just timing how you're moving through things. In that sense, it's almost more like, oh, I don't know even what to call that. It almost feels like Frogger, where you're trying to avoid the path of coming at you, but doing it in reverse, but also doing it in multiple different angles. I don't know what to call that, but I think that makes the most sense for what I want to do for that level. And once you catch what you need to catch, then we go to a close scene. So that's sort of roughly the other two scenes that I'm looking at. There is while on board the spaceship, move through a series of traps to get to the main villain. And so that's sort of like a platformer, a simple platformer or puzzle scroller. Or just an avoidance. A lot of those games are pretty simple, where you a channel with spikes that drop or guns that fire bullets at you as you move through, and you just have to time things right. Sort of like every object you can create in Buildbox, you can set it to be a platform that you can land on. You can set it on to be a thing that you can collide with, and those collisions can bounce you off, or those collisions can those collisions can even kill you. So you can build an object that if you hit it, it kills you, in which case floor spikes or dropping from the ceiling. You can set a thing to be something that knocks you off or drops from under you. So you land on it and you have a 2-second delay before it drops under you. And you can do a, you can have it change. So when you land on it, turn into a trap that snaps on you after like 3 seconds, or it explodes, or it starts to wiggle and it turns into a monster. You can do that. You can do things where if you land on it, it's a platform that moves, so you ride it. You can do a fair amount with that. I'm not sure if my idea of the grapple, like I may make the like satellites or whatever be a moving platform, so they make sort of glide around. There's a spider on the wall. Okay. I saw it on the camera, actually. I'm like, something moving? Yes, it's a spider. So you can have the objects sort of moving, and you can even set them to move on a pattern. So a path, it doesn't have to be like a circle or a straight line or anything like that. It can be this warbly, wiggly path that you can make it follow. I think the trick is with something like that, I do not believe you can loop back to the beginning point and start. Like once you establish a wiggling path, like you can set a move in circle, move in straight line, bound off object and forth to repeat. So you can get it bouncing back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. I'm trying to do this the right way so the camera sees. You can bounce back and forth over and over again. But I do not think if you do a freehand pattern that you can, I don't think you can get back to the starting point and repeat the pattern over again. You might be able to, not sure. I feel like most of the times I've seen that path editor used, I feel like, well, you might be able to. The path editor use I've seen has brought a thing to the end of the path and it stops. It might be possible that once it reaches the end of the path, it lets go and continues to move in a straight line from where it stops. So if you can set the start point, like if platform object B hits point A, it follows the free path. When it reaches the end of the freeform path, it drifts freely in a straight line. If you set that straight line to intercept point A again, then initiate that whole movement process. So it's possible that it could be done that way. I don't know. And if I did like 5 or 6 objects, each with their own path, so that they're all moving around together, and it's a big enough space, and you have the object that you're trying to catch just sort of looping through that area. I can see that potentially being a way to do it. I think like there might be a point at which you want to do like that object you're trying to catch drifting more along a path than just aimlessly around the center of a bigger circle. But the trick with that is, with something like that, if your object is to catch the object, it on the first section, then the rest of the level is useless. Got to figure out how to make that make the most sense. I may have to set the path so that it is a little bit of a chase. So you don't have any hope of catching it for the first 4 or 5 scenes. And then like the 6th scene is really just a giant loop that the 7th, 8th, and 9th scene is really just a giant loop that you're chasing the object around to try to catch it. And you'll be able to move out of a given scene. So that loop of scenes is more like you go down 4 scenes in a row, and then you have 4 scenes in a box. And in that box, that object that you're trying to catch is going to just be drifting in sort of like a spirograph where the overlapping hoops go around and around and around. And maybe you have a timer so that the faster you're able to catch it, the higher the value, the score that you are at. And you have things like, in this case, the object you're trying to get is going to be something more like a coin. It's some of the terminology used in BuildBox are, you have objects, villains, bullets, coins, and your character. So your character is the one you're controlling and doing things with. Your character can shoot bullets. So can your enemies are things that like you don't want to encounter. You can land on them like in a Mario and they'll disappear, so you kill them. You can also be killed by them sometimes. And they're usually a thing that moves, or you can set specific controls for. Not always. Sometimes they're just a floating object that if you hit, they explode and kill you. And then you have platforms that you can land on and bump yourself up to new levels, and sort of like you can bounce off walls. So like villains and platforms, like you can also have platform land on them, they kill you. So what you have in some cases of simple games on these templates are, don't touch the walls because they'll kill you. And it's usually in a type of game where you have like a spaceship or something like that, and you're traveling down a channel, or a plane, or a car driving through a tunnel. And if you go off the road, or you hit the walls of the tunnel at your speeds, it's going to destroy your vehicle. So it makes sense that you touch the walls, you die. But those are usually built as a platform that kills you if you hit it. Now, the villains are usually rotating balls or saw blades or fire or aliens or creatures that attack you. Those are things that you usually can set to be like the distinction between a platform that moves and can kill you if it hits you and a villain. It's a small distinction. Like you can make a platform that's a villain, and you can make a villain that's a platform. And so you can bend a lot of that. But for the most part, like bullets you can turn them into physics objects, but I don't think you can do like a free movement bullet. It doesn't move on its own, I don't think. Maybe you could do that too. Maybe you can fire bullets that become enemies. And let's see, like the other thing where I was going with that was the thing you're trying to catch is going to be a coin. And a coin is something like, it's an object that can be floating or moving or stationary or released when you hit a platform, like in Mario where he hits the blocks that shoots the coin up. Hitting the block at that point releases a thing, and that thing either is like a mushroom or something, and it moves on its own and you have to catch it, or it's a thing that you can pick up. So you walk up to it, like when Mario's running along and he encounters free floating coins in the sky. When he jumps and catches those, it adds to a you. And that's largely what a coin is. But the important reason for using a coin in this particular scenario is object. You can use it to trigger an event, and it's not like you don't destroy the object, you don't bounce off the object, you don't stick to the object, and it doesn't hurt you. For the most part, it's something that when you collide, you collect it. It triggers a win scenario or a point value or something like that, or stops the, or yeah, just that the ability to collect objects is things called coins. Now you could do something like in the zombie game where I've been working on it, like the things that you pick up, like somebody throws a boo or a brick or a bat or a machete. When those things are thrown at you, they can be bullets. But once they either hit the ground or hit you, you can have them fall and turn into a coin. And if then you can pick them up, and it offers you the ability to change your, it'd be sort of like a power up. So like if you have a brick and it lands on the ground in front of you, you can pick up that brick like a coin, and it gives you the power up to throw a brick, but one brick. Whereas like in a lot of games, you hit a 3-dot power up, and when firing one bullet forward, now you've got a spread where you've got 3 bullets that go 2 in angles and 1 straight forward, and you can get like get them so that they continue from that point on until you get hit, and then it brings you back down to a regular 1 bullet. Or you can put a timer on it so that it lasts for a set of time, like Mario's invulnerability star. Or you can set them to be a 1 use. You get it, you use it, it's gone. So like in Mario Kart, where if you catch a blue turtle shell thing, you've got 1, or a banana peel or whatever, and you use it against the other players, it's 1 use. You don't get an infinite number of blue turtle shells or an infinite number of bananas. At least when I played that one game a few times, that's how it worked when I played it. I don't know if that's the way it still works or not. But yeah, so you have the ability to do some of those things. And then at that point, it becomes window dressing. It's how you decorate your pieces that make the game look distinct and interesting. And I sort of grew and complain a little bit about how simplified and template-based Buildbox is. But really, when you look at if you look at all those games that are big now, the Team Fortress, Overwatch, Fortnite, and I think there are like 2 other games recently, and they're all based on the same style of gameplay. They're all really just somebody drops, you have to fight other people on that territory, and that's really like we're all the same game for the most. Little like Fortnite has 1 set of mechanics, and the new one, I forget what it's called, has collect and gather certain features that Fortnite didn't have. But I can't tell the difference, honestly, between like 2 or 3 of these different, like Team Fortress and Fortnite are very similar. Overwatch is a little bit different. Like, you're not collecting crates full of ammo for your characters so much for that. You get heals instead, and a few of those types of things. But over and over large, it's basically just you have a team of other people that you work with to hunt down another team and eliminate them from the board. and it's usually done in a first person or sort of like a third person lag behind, so you're right over the shoulder of another of your player character or whatever. But they're really pretty much all done the same way. And the difference between the graphics and a few little, like, how the fighting works, how the building works, and those types of things. So a lot of these old school games, like, I get that BuildBox has the templates for all of them, and they're all very rudimentary templates. But for the most part, that's because most of those types of games are pretty simple. I think I'm oftentimes trying to see if I can bend how those work. So, like, my Captain Mr. Space Ninja game premise has a storyline that it's following, and it shifts between a Space Invader style gameplay to a whack-a-mole or an asteroids kind of gameplay to a platformer, a variation on a platformer, I guess we would call it. But the platformer where you're trying to go through the ship and avoid the traps is an entirely different, that's like a runner style. Whereas the one where you're trying to catch the object, that's more, again, like the swimmer or the, yeah, I don't know that I've seen a game that behaves that way. And most of the little versions of these things that I'm doing, they do it in a way that's not something I've seen do it before. So I've seen Space Invaders games, and it's usually like you're a steady thing at the bottom. So you're like a tank with your gun pointed straight up, and there are things drifting back and forth across the top of the screen, working their way down towards you. I've seen a few others like the Galaga, where you have the ability to move back and forth and up and around a little bit, and enemies have their ability to weave around and then dive down at you. So I've seen games like that before, but I've never seen one where you're at the bottom, but it's set to look like a 3-point perspective. I think there was a game based off of Tron that's sort of like this. One where you have that sort of like half pipe that the things move down towards you on, and you fire at them, but they're moving towards you. What I'm doing is sort of the reverse. The things near you, it's on a half pipe sort of, and it's trying to get away from you. And you're trying to disable its ability to move by hitting its engines, but you're also moving forward. And as you move forward, in order to continue to move, you have to hit a certain part of it so it drops fuel for you to keep moving. And so if you lose your fuel supply, you stop and they get further and further away, and it's harder and harder for you to hit them, and then they get away. So a few little things to juggle in there. And like, so I've not seen a game that does that before. Not seen the whack-a-mole game like I just described done that way either, where it's sort of like trying to play skee-ball and whack-a-mole in the same game. And I've not seen using the grappling hook to move around a field of moving objects to catch a moving object. I have never seen that before. But most of the mechanics are things that do exist in games, not usually paired the way I'm pairing them. So like there are games where you try to catch a thing. So you move and chase it and try to catch it. Sometimes it's stationary, so you're like a Pac-Man moving through a maze and you get the pellets. And if you get a pellet that turns the ghosts into edible, you also chase them and catch them. That's very, very close to what I'm talking about, but I've never seen it paired with a game where your only means of is to, time and predict the angle that'll bring you through an intercept of a moving object. I've never seen that before. And so I don't know how much of those are possible using the BuildBox game system, because a lot of those templates are made to make a Pac-Man game or an Asteroids game or a Space Invaders style game. And if you're using a Space Invaders that compares to the Tron style game, you're using it in a way that it's not intended. And so you're using a mechanic that works for one template and a mechanic that works in another template and may not be available in the template you've chosen. And so that's where I'm sort of struggling to get it to do certain things. Like there's the shooter game that you can play. And the shooter game is a spaceship that moves back and forth, forward and back, and you have enemies that come and you shoot them. But the avoidance game has the one that's easiest to set up, where you only move across the bottom and objects come down at you and you have to avoid them so you don't get hit by them. And you can add a villain to the end of that, or you can add a villain anywhere in there if you want to. And you can add a shooting capability to that one so that you can disable the enemy ship. I don't know if you can get them. I'm pretty sure you can get them to drop coins. I don't know if you can get those coins to be fuel to prevent you from going forward any further if you don't have enough of them. So like having a coin gauge at the bottom, because for the avoidance games, you have pretty much a consistent, you can be at the bottom of the screen, but the screen is going to continue to scroll forward. And I don't know if there's a way to do a counter that counts down that adds numbers to that counter to bring it back up each time you catch a coin. And when you catch that coin, it allows you to continue. And if you run out of coins, it stops moving you forward. I don't know if that's a feature that's available. I may have to figure out like a defeat mechanic where if your timer runs out, you die. And by dying, that means you stop, and it plays the animation of the enemy ship just getting away from you. I don't know if that's a possibility that I can do. So I have to figure that out. So it's like that mechanic that works better in one of the other play styles. But I don't know if I can add it to the avoidance style game, which has the most features that make sense for the style that I'm going for, but may not have one or two key features. And I don't know if I can add them in or not, but I want to try. And likewise, for the other types of levels, they each have some of those types of aspects where one of the types of templates can meet the need for what I need to do mostly, but there will be one or two key features that's present in one of the other types of templates than the one that makes the most sense for that level. I don't know how easy it is to include those mechanics. So I got to figure that out. But if I can get that to work, that'd be great. The other thing is segueing between different types of games. So going from the avoidance game, the Space Invaders, to the asteroid whack an asteroid style game. Those types of games. And I don't know if BuildBox has an easy segue from World 1 to World 2 being two different types of gameplay. And if I can do that through because like the best thing I can think of is at the end, when you beat the level, you get to the end and you land on a wormhole, like an invisible wormhole, like a checkpoint that you land on. And that checkpoint takes you to the next world. And if the next world is possible, you shift over to a cutscene animation, interactive animation scene. And then meet the qualifications that bring a portal to you that brings you to world 2 of gameplay, so whack-a-mole. And so I feel like that might be possible. I just don't know how to, like, the best way to do it. I haven't figured that one out yet, and I haven't seen anybody doing it, so I don't see any tutorials to do that yet. So that's going to be the figure out. Is each of those worlds has a mechanic that is better suited for gameplay. And I have to figure out how to get that to be included in the type of gameplay for each of the worlds that I build. And then once those worlds, can I link them together in a sequence that carries the story forward properly? So I'm kind of playing with that. I mean, I've got it all sort of scripted out at this point. Next to do it, it's just going to take a little time, I think. I've got most I need, except for losing by running out of fuel, worked out for stage 1. And I haven't got to progress from stage 1 to cutscene, and from cutscene to stage 2. But I think, and I'd have to try, I'm pretty sure I've got got it figured out how to do the cutscenes as just a minimally interactive gameplay. And by minimally interactive, I mean like you have a character in one location that's not moving. There's another character at another location that's not moving. You hit the space bar, it launches a bullet that causes a change in the scene that illustrates something. And so really what you're doing is like character, hit spacebar, character, hit spacebar. It's back and forth. It's a scene change. And the only interaction you're having is progressing that scene by spacebar. So I think that's the way it seems. I've not built a cutscene yet that I can test that out on to see if I can build something that railroad. There's no lose scenario in the cutscene. You can't lose a cutscene. You can't die. And so what I'm doing is making it so that it doesn't have a way to do an animated scene without, well, maybe it does. I don't know. I'd really have to look to see what I can do with it. Cutscenes are probably going to be tricky. The segue between scenes are, I keep calling them scenes. They're worlds. So cutscene between worlds and the shifting between game world, cutscene world, and game world. And then those mechanics that better suit other gameplay styles, seeing if I can shoehorn them into the templates that I'm forced to use in BuildBox. Because it really is, like, they give you, and I get why they do it. If you're going to build a simple game to play, like, you don't make one basic game setup that you do and have 13 billion options that you have to figure out how to apply each one. You really want, like, oh, I'm going to build a motocross, a motorcycle jumping game. So I'm going to use the motor jumping or like the vehicle jumping template. And so it's got the physics worked out on all the objects. It's got the scrolling of the screen, the consequences of gravity versus knowing that if your object hits a stationary object straight on rather than jumping over it, it causes damage or kills you. Like, it gives you all those presets to start from. And I get why they do that. That makes sense for a lot of simple games. For games where you're shifting between modes of gameplay and you're breaking the standard model, It's not as easy. And again, that's mostly me. That's my realization that my tendency is to use a thing as not intended and to make a thing more complicated than it needs to be. It's something I do in everything, but it's because I have a sort of artistic vision that I'm trying to achieve. And I'm not basing that vision off of what the system, I'm basing it off of, this is the story I want to tell. Now, how can I make it tell that story? Style of game building, and it's not the one I default to. I mean, it would probably be easier to do it that way, but that's sort of not how my brain works. So it's harder to bend in that direction. And we're at 50 minutes again. So given the chance, I can ramble. I'm going to call it here tonight. I'm going to see if I feel better tomorrow, and I'm going to wait to hear back from my doctor about whether or not they think I need to go in for a course of antibiotics for this tick bite I think has caused an infection of some kind. Yay! And I know that's going to wreck my digestive system. It's probably going to set me back, if not a couple years in my recovery. But it is the story of my life. So I will move on tonight, and I will tomorrow. Take care of yourselves and have a good night. Whew. Feels stuffy and hot in here.